He bought me for the weekend for $5,000, forgetting to mention that I would become a living target for Hitmen. Janelle stared at the notification on her cracked phone screen. $5,000. Pending. It was enough to cover 3 months of rent, fix the transmission in her dying Honda, and keep the wolves from her door for the first time in 2 years. Her hands trembled, not from the cold of the Lotus Club's industrial freezer where she was hiding for a smoke break, but from the weight of the decision she had just made. She pushed through the heavy steel doors back into the pulsating rhythm of the club. The bass of the music vibrated in her teeth. She was not supposed to be on the floor tonight, she was supposed to be invisible. But Siwoo Kong had changed that. Siwoo was sitting exactly where he had been 20 minutes ago, in the shadowed corner of the VIP section, a place where the light seemed afraid to touch. He did not look like the other patrons, bloated businessmen throwing money at girls young enough to be their daughters. Siwoo was a predator at rest. He wore a suit that cost more than Janelle's entire life education, cut sharp enough to bleed on. His stillness was terrifying. "It's done," Janelle said, her voice barely audible over the thumping music. She stood before him, smoothing her server's uniform, feeling ridiculous that in 48 hours, she was supposed to be the girlfriend of the heir to the Kong syndicate. Siwoo did not look up immediately. He finished his drink, the ice clinking against the crystal like a warning bell. When his eyes finally met hers, they were devoid of warmth. They were calculation engines, assessing her value, her durability. "Good," he said. His voice was deep, textured like gravel wrapped in velvet. "The car is outside. You leave your uniform here. You leave your life here. For 2 days, you are Janelle Davis, graduate student, respectable, and mine. Is that all?" Janelle asked, trying to keep her spine straight. "Just act the part. Smile at your mother. Hold your hand. And stay close," Siwoo added. He stood up, and the air in the VIP booth seemed to vanish, sucked into the vacuum of his presence. He towered over her. Physically close. At all times. Do not wander. Do not go to the bathroom alone. Do not speak to anyone unless I introduce you. Sounds controlling, Janelle muttered, regret already souring her stomach. But for $5,000, I guess I can play the obedient doll. Siwoo's jaw tightened. He reached out, his fingers brushing her arm. The touch was not romantic, it was a shackle. It is not about control, Janelle. It is about logistics. Before she could ask what that meant, a man from the table across the aisle, a rival promoter known for getting handsy with the staff, stumbled into their space. He was drunk, sloppy, and grinning at Janelle. "Hey, sweetheart," the drunk man slurred, reaching for Janelle's waist. "How much for a—" He never finished the sentence. Siwoo moved with a speed that blurred the edges of reality. One moment he was standing still, the next, he had the man's wrist twisted backward at a sickening angle. There was a wet snap. The drunk man screamed, dropping to his knees. Siwoo did not even blink. He did not look angry, he looked bored. He leaned down, whispering something into the sobbing man's ear that made the man go pale and silent instantly. Janelle stepped back, her heart hammering against her ribs like a trapped bird. This was not just a rich guy with an attitude. This was violence woven into a human suit. Siwoo straightened his cuffs, then turned to Janelle. The violence evaporated from his face, replaced by the terrifying mask of indifference. "Let's go. We have a schedule." You just broke his arm," Janelle stammered. "Siwoo, who are you really?" "I am the man paying your rent," he said coldly. "And you are the woman who agreed not to ask questions." He placed a hand on the small of her back, guiding her toward the private exit. It felt less like a protective gesture and more like he was steering a piece of equipment. As they stepped out into the biting New York air, a black SUV idled at the curb. The driver, a man with a scar running through his eyebrow, opened the door. Janelle hesitated. Every instinct she had honed growing up in a rough neighborhood screamed at her to run. This was dangerous. This was wrong. But then she thought of the eviction notice taped to her door. She thought of the empty fridge. She climbed into the car. As the door slammed shut, sealing her in with Siwoo, she noticed something sliding out from under the seat as the car accelerated. It was a Kevlar vest. Put it on, Siwoo said, looking out the window. What? Janelle's voice cracked. Why do I need a bulletproof vest for a family wedding? Because, Siwoo said, finally turning to look at her, his eyes dark and unreadable, my family is very critical. He was lying. She knew it. But the locks on the doors had already clicked engage. The Kong estate in the Hamptons was not a home, it was a fortress disguised as a palace. High walls, cameras swiveling like reptilian eyes, and men in dark suits standing at every perimeter point. Janelle sat in the guest bedroom, staring at the dress Siwoo had provided for the rehearsal dinner. It was beautiful, a floor-length silk gown. But it was red. Bright, screaming, blood red. It stands out, Janelle whispered to her reflection. In a sea of black tuxedos and muted pastels that she had seen the other guests wearing upon arrival, she would be a beacon. She put it on. It fit perfectly, hugging her curves, making her look like a trophy. A very expensive, very visible trophy. When she descended the grand staircase, the conversation in the foyer died. 200 eyes turned to her. She felt exposed, not just because of the daring cut of the dress, but because of the hostility radiating from the room. These were not welcoming family members. They were sharks circling fresh meat. Siwoo was waiting at the bottom of the stairs. He looked devastating in his tuxedo, but his posture was rigid. When he took her hand, his grip was bruising. Smile, he murmured through grit teeth. Everyone is watching. They hate me, Janelle whispered back, keeping a plastered smile on her face as they walked into the ballroom. Your mother looked at me like I was a stain on the carpet. My mother is a traditionalist. You are, unexpected. I'm a distraction, Janelle realized, the words tumbling out before she could check them. Siwoo stiffened. He did not deny it. They moved through the crowd. Siwoo introduced her to business associates, men with cold eyes and scars hidden under expensive collars. They did not ask about her studies. They did not ask about her life. They stared at her, then looked at Siwoo with knowing smirks. Brave choice, Siwoo, one man said, a heavy-set uncle with gold rings on every finger. He looked Janelle up and down, his gaze lingering on the red dress. Very easy to spot. Janelle felt a chill crawl up her spine that had nothing to do with the air conditioning. Very easy to spot. She needed a drink. She needed to breathe. I'm going to the ladies' room, she told Siwoo. No, he said sharply. You stay here. I'm a grown woman, Siwoo. I need 2 minutes. She pulled her hand away from his grip. For a second, she saw panic flash in his eyes, genuine panic, but she ignored it, turning and weaving through the crowd toward the corridor she had seen earlier. She found the bathroom, a lavish space of marble and gold. She gripped the edge of the sink, staring at herself. What have you done, Janelle? The door opened behind her. It was Mrs. Kong, Siwoo's mother. The older woman was petite, elegant, and looked at Janelle with absolute disgust. How much? Mrs. Kong asked. Her English was clipped, precise. Excuse me. How much did my son pay you to be the bait? Janelle froze. The water running in the sink sounded like a roar in her ears. I do not know what you're talking about. I'm his girlfriend. Mrs. Kong laughed. It was a dry, brittle sound. Girlfriend. Please. Siwoo does not have girlfriends. He has liabilities. He brought you here because the Kim family has threatened a hit. He needed everyone looking at something bright and pretty while he concludes his meeting in the library. You are not a guest, my dear. You are a flare. The blood drained from Janelle's face. The red dress. The instructions to never leave his side. The Kevlar vest in the car. He had not hired her to pretend. He had hired her to die so he would not have to. You should run, Mrs. Kong said, checking her makeup in the mirror. Though I doubt you will make it past the gate. The snipers are already in position. Janelle stumbled back, her heels catching on the marble. She did not wait for Mrs. Kong to finish. She burst out of the bathroom, her breath coming in short, panicked gasps. She had to get out. She had to leave. She turned the corner, heading for the side exit, but collided hard with a solid wall of muscle. Siwoo. He grabbed her arms, steadying her. I told you not to leave my side. You bastard, Janelle hissed, shoving him. I know. I know why I'm wearing red. I know why you wanted me here. Siwoo's face hardened. He did not apologize. He did not deny it. He grabbed her wrist, his grip like iron. Then you know why you need to stay close. If you run now, you are alone. And if you are alone, you are dead. Come with me. He dragged her back toward the ballroom, back toward the music and the laughter and the hundreds of eyes. Janelle stumbled after him, tears of rage stinging her eyes. She was trapped. She was holding the hand of the monster who had sold her life for a business deal. The wedding ceremony the next day took place in the garden. It was a grotesque display of wealth, white roses imported from Ecuador, a string quartet playing Mozart, and enough champagne to drown a city. Janelle stood beside Siwoo in the front row. She was wearing sapphire blue today, another choice by Siwoo's stylist. Still bright. Still visible against the greenery. She felt sick. She had not slept. She had spent the night barricaded in the guest room, listening to the footsteps of guards patrolling the hall. Just get through the vows, Siwoo had told her that morning, his voice devoid of emotion. Then the car takes you home. You get an extra 10,000 for the trouble. The trouble. As if surviving an assassination attempt was an inconvenience. The bride, Siwoo's sister, looked radiant. She seemed oblivious to the fact that half the guests were armed criminals. The priest began to speak about love and loyalty. The irony tasted like ash in Janelle's mouth. She scanned the perimeter. The high walls of the garden were lined with trees. Perfect cover. She saw a flicker of light from the roof of the main house. A reflection. A scope. Her heart stopped. Siwoo, she whispered, her voice trembling. Quiet, he commanded, eyes forward. Siwoo, the roof. He tensed. He did not look. He knew. The crack of the gunshot was louder than she expected. It was not a pop, it was a thunderclap that tore through the Mozart. Janelle flinched, instinctively waiting for the shove. She braced herself for Siwoo's hands to push her into the line of fire, to use her body to shield his own as he had planned. She closed her eyes, waiting for the pain. But the shove never came. Instead, a heavy weight slammed into her from the side, knocking her to the manicured grass. Hard arms wrapped around her, shielding her head, her chest, her entire body. Siwoo was on top of her. Something wet and hot splashed onto Janelle's cheek. Another shot rang out, chipping the stone fountain behind them. The garden erupted into chaos. Screams, overturned chairs, the sound of returned fire from Siwoo's security. Janelle opened her eyes. Siwoo was hovering over her, his face contorted in pain. Blood was blooming rapidly across the shoulder of his black suit jacket. You. Janelle gasped, the air knocked out of her lungs. You re-hit. Stay down, Siwoo gritted out, his teeth clenched so hard she thought they would shatter. Do not move. Why? She screamed over the noise of the firefight. I'm the bait. I'm the distraction. You were supposed to use me. Siwoo looked down at her. His eyes, usually so cold and guarded, were wide open, raw with agony and something else, something terrifyingly human. I could not, he choked out, blood trickling from the corner of his mouth. I looked at you this morning, and I could not do it. The contract, it was a mistake. A bullet kicked up dirt inches from Janelle's ear. Siwoo flinched, pressing her deeper into the grass, his body absorbing the impact of the chaotic stampede around them. I fell in love with the lie, he whispered, his voice fading as shock began to set in. I'm sorry, Janelle. I'm so sorry. He slumped forward, his weight pinning her to the ground. The invincible mafia prince, the man who broke arms with a flick of his wrist, was bleeding out on top of her because he had chosen to take the bullet meant for her. The firing was intensifying. The business associates were not protecting them. Janelle realized with a jolt of horror that the security guards were firing at them. It was a coup. The betrayal was not from outside, it was from within. Siwoo was losing consciousness. If they stayed here, in the open, they were both dead. Janelle looked at the men who had bought her, threatened her, and then saved her. She looked at the blood on her expensive dress. She could play the victim. She could scream and wait to die. Or she could earn her $5,000. Janelle shoved Siwoo's dead weight off her chest, gasping for air. The garden was a kill zone. Guests were trampling each other to get to the main gates, but the gates were locked. A trap. "Wake up," she screamed, slapping Siwoo's face. "Damn you, wake up." Siwoo groaned, his eyes fluttering open. They were hazy. "Leave me," he mumbled. "Run." "Shut up," Janelle snapped. The fear that had paralyzed her for 2 days evaporated, replaced by a cold, sharp clarity. She had worked double shifts on her feet for 10 years. She had carried trays heavier than her own body weight. She knew how to navigate chaos. She grabbed Siwoo by his good arm. "Get up. Now." Adrenaline flooded her system. She hauled him to his feet. He stumbled, heavy and disoriented, but he moved. "The house," he slurred. "Safe room." "No," Janelle said, ducking as a vase exploded near them. "They inside the house. I saw the flash from the roof. The house is compromised. We going to the kitchen." "Kitchen." "Service entrance." The caterers loaded in from the south alley. No cameras, no guards. It's a blind spot. Siwoo looked at her, confusion warring with pain. He did not know the layout of his own estate's underbelly. But Janelle did. She noticed the service doors. She noticed where the staff smoked. She noticed the invisible paths. She draped his arm over her shoulder, taking on his weight. They moved, not running, but weaving through the panic. Janelle used the fleeing crowd as cover, keeping heads and bodies between them and the shooters on the roof. They crashed through the heavy swinging doors of the kitchen. It was empty, the staff had fled. The smell of roasting duck and fear hung in the air. "There," Janelle pointed to the loading bay doors. Siwoo stumbled, his legs giving out. He slid down the stainless steel counter, leaving a smear of red. "Janelle, stop. I see a knot." She knelt beside him, ripping the hem of her designer dress. She bound the silk tightly around his shoulder, applying pressure. He cried out, a guttural sound. "You bought me for 48 hours, she hissed, her face inches from his. "Time is not up, Siwoo. You do not get to die until I get my check." He looked at her, really looked at her, through the haze of blood loss. He saw the fire in her eyes, the steel in her spine. He realized that the woman he had hired as a prop was the only real thing in his entire world. "The van," she ordered. A catering van sat in the bay, keys dangling in the ignition. She half carried, half dragged him to the passenger seat. She jumped behind the wheel, throwing the van into reverse. They tore out of the alleyway just as 2 men in suits burst into the kitchen, guns raised. Janelle did not look back. She drove like a maniac, smashing through the wooden service gate and tearing onto the back roads of the Hamptons. 20 minutes later, she pulled into a dense patch of woods, miles from the estate. She killed the engine. Silence rushed back in, heavy and suffocating. Siwoo was pale, his breathing shallow. Janelle leaned over, checking his wound. The bullet had passed through the muscle. He would live, if he got a doctor soon. You drive well," Siwoo whispered, a ghost of a smile touching his lips. "I drove a getaway car for my brother once," Janelle lied. Or maybe she was not lying. In this moment, her past did not matter. Only her survival. "Janelle." He reached out, his bloody hand finding hers. "The contract is void. You are free. Go." "I'm not going anywhere," she said. Her voice was steady. She looked down at their joined hands, his manicured and bloody, hers rough and shaking. "Why?" "Because you took a bullet for the help," she said softly. "And because you owe me way more than $5,000 now." Siwoo squeezed her hand. It was weak, but it was there. "I will give you anything. Money. Safety. The world." Start with the truth, she said. From now on, no more lies. No more fake dating. If we do this, we do it for real. Partners. Siwoo looked at her with awe. He had spent his life surrounded by people who feared him or wanted to use him. He had never met anyone who looked at his darkness and decided to grab a flashlight instead of running away. Partners, he agreed, closing his eyes. But first, hospital. Janelle put the van in gear. She looked at the road ahead. It was dangerous. It was uncertain. She was now an accessory to a mafia war, driving a stolen van with a bleeding crime lord beside her. She had never felt more alive. Hold on, boss, she said, merging onto the highway. We've got work to do. As the sun began to set, painting the sky the same color as the blood on her dress, Janelle realized the truth. He had not just bought her for the weekend. He had bought her a new life. And she was going to make sure they both survived to live it.